I first met the mayor when we were working together on auto burglary issues, and I'll never forget, she said to me, "Sharkey, we're going to throw everything in the kitchen sink at this." Well, here comes the kitchen sink. Chief Scott, thank you for creating space in your department for innovation and trying new ideas. It's been an honor and a pleasure working with your team. Eric Street from Enterprise has been an incredible partner in getting this program started. And I also want to thank all of the community organizations and business leaders throughout the city who also made commitments to fund this reward program so that we can finally make a serious dent in this vexing auto burglary issue. You know, I first started working on this problem when I had to chase a stolen van all over the city. And I was shocked to discover that it is just a small number of people that are responsible for most of the auto burglaries that we see in the city. It is fencing rings, and their business model is they actually pay people to break into cars and steal from businesses, and then they sell these goods overseas and online. The last major ring we busted in the Bay Area had $8 million of stolen goods in multiple warehouses. So this is a big business. There's folks making a lot of money. Now, I appreciate what the mayor said about focusing on what's important here. I think it's important to remember that drugstores aren't the biggest victims. The biggest victims are working families who don't have the time and money to repair windows, replace phones, go find new bicycles. The biggest victims aren't the big businesses, but the small businesses. They aren't the ones that have to close a couple stores. They're the ones with no stores left to close. Warm Planet Bikes had to completely shut down their operation after every single bicycle was stolen from their store. It took them weeks to get back online. Finally, the biggest victims, and if we're being honest, are the people that are injured and the families that have lost loved ones dealing with these crimes. We've made incredible progress lately. I think it's fantastic. Obviously, as both the mayor and the chief said, we have a lot more work to do. And, you know, I personally am sick of what these fencing rings are doing. And I know the people that live here are sick of it as well. And so what I like about this program is that it is a cruise missile aimed at the leadership of these fencing rings. These are the guys making lots of money fencing these stolen goods. And right now, they are acting with impunity. They believe they're invulnerable. And they are mistaken because they are vulnerable. Every time they pay off a thief, their friends and their associates, the people that know who they are and know what they do, that's a weak spot. And this reward helps provide a motivation for those people to stand up and do the right thing and let us know who they are so that we can shut them down. And I'm excited about this program because finally I really feel a sense of optimism that we're going to start to tear these rings apart. I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Eric.
And just want to acknowledge, thank you, Eric, for being here from Enterprise Rent-A-Car for providing support for this reward program. And I just want to say two things that I know the chief mentioned, Park Smart. You know, I know there are people who come here to San Francisco from places, and you come from places where you are probably used to leaving things in your car and leaving even your door open and not worrying about someone stealing from you. And I'm sorry that you have to experience that in San Francisco, but I do think it's important that our rental-car companies and some of our hotels that we support and work with the visitors in San Francisco to make sure that they are aware of what happens in many of these cases. And in some of these cases, there are people who are watching people. They are following them. They know what they might be loading in their car. And so when we park, for example, here, and then we put things in the trunk, I've been a victim myself when I've parked someplace and put something in the trunk where I come back and my car is broken into. And sadly, that is something that happens. So ultimately, we know that it's not an easy solution, but part of it is, yes, we need to make arrests. We need to go after those who commit these crimes. but I also want to make sure that we are doing a better job as a city of trying to protect the people who are visiting our city, who live here, and providing ways in which they can protect whatever it is that they have, the valuables that they have, so that they are not a victim. So Park Smart is a part of our program as well. And I want to also say to those who are committing these crimes, number one, we will not rest until we are holding you accountable for these crimes. But also, I want to say, you don't have to do this. You know, the city has so many incredible employment opportunities. We're hiring Muni drivers and other city employees. Restaurants and places throughout San Francisco, they're looking for people to hire. We're here to give people a chance. We have wonderful program, Tech SF, if you've never worked in tech and you want to learn about that industry. We provide stipends as you go through City Build and other training programs. So there's no reason to risk, you know, your life, your freedom, or someone else's life committing a crime that just makes things worse for all of us. And so I would say that think about that and take us up on an opportunity to do something different with your life. Because San Francisco has afforded so many people an extraordinary opportunity to make a decent and honest living. But once you cross that line, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to the public to make sure that people feel safe. And so when those lines are crossed, we have no choice but to hold you accountable. And that's what we will do. So this reward is just another step in trying to get cooperation from the public so that we can make those arrests, and we can not only hold the person who steals the items and breaks the windows and damages the property, we could also hold those who use this as a way to make a living, those who take those items and resells them on various platforms. We can hold them accountable. And we're not just going to stop here locally. We are working with our state and our federal partners in order to introduce legislation that will hold people who are involved in these criminal rings accountable for what they have created in these environments, especially in major cities like San Francisco. So I want to thank you all so much for being here. Ultimately, there are challenges in any major city, but San Francisco, as I said at the beginning, it's a beautiful city. And I want people to have beautiful experiences from start to finish, from the time they drive here, from the time they land here on their planes, to the restaurants they visit, to the museums, to the locations. I want them to go home with a smile on their face and be happy that they chose San Francisco as their destination. So thank you all so much for being here today, and we will answer any questions from the press if you have any about this program.
Yeah, I mean, from from the rental car company standpoint, certainly rental cars are being targeted, but also residents of San Francisco are being targeted as well. So I mean, from our perspective, yes, rental cars are targeted, but from our conversations with the city as well, residents are also being impacted. That has really kind of created, you know, to Sharky's point, a bunch of businesses coming together to try to privately help fund a reward. Eric Street, controller. You're welcome.
Wouldn't we want it to be that way? But it doesn't work that way. People who commit crime, it's a lot more complicated, right? It's not just, it's like, maybe, but they might think too, well, I'm the one who committed the act, so I'm probably going to be held accountable. So the likelihood that that might happen is probably not really likely. It's a hope, but it's not likely.
What would you say the residents were concerned about? An arrest is one thing, but how do we stop repeat offenders from get out and just get right back to it?
And I think a big part of that is making sure that the punishment fits the crime to the point where someone feels like, you know what, I don't want to go through that again. So when I get out, as long as there's an opportunity, and as you know, San Francisco supports giving people a second chance and providing that opportunity, then the likelihood that someone will go back to that, if there's a opportunity for them to succeed in something else where they can generate income for their livelihood, the likelihood that we can see them go back to committing these crimes is less likely. But people need to also be held accountable. And I think that's what's missing here in many cases, because they believe they can come to San Francisco, commit a crime, get arrested, which our officers do a really great job at investigating and making the arrest. But where's the accountability? That's the piece that needs to stick. Yes.
I just want to clarify, when you talk about fencing rings and related to car burglaries, is this also meant to incentivize retailers to do more reporting of thefts?
Well, I think it's meant to incentivize everyone. Because, you know, I know sometimes, like, I'll be honest, like one of my car break-ins, I didn't even bother to report it, right? It's like, okay, let me get my window fixed. Nothing was stolen. Wasn't anything in my car, right? I'm not saying that that should happen. We should report every crime, you know, and this was before, you know, long time ago. And part of one of the reasons what's important to me is, you know, making sure that these crimes are reported so that we know that they're happening. And then also, hopefully people are looking at license plates as people pull off, but then we know that some of these cars may be stolen or may be connected to other people. But we're able to, if we're able to identify the car, there's fingerprints, there's a whole investigation. So if there are people, we don't want you to put yourself in harm's way. But if you're paying attention and you see a license plate or make or model or any information and you're able to share that information with us, that's important. And I think that people who are merchants as well as folks who are out here may be more willing to provide information because, you know, the criminals are committing these acts in broad daylight in this city, and they think that they can get away with it. And the goal is to make sure that they know eyes and ears are on the streets, and we're not going to let them get away with it.
When it comes to, you know, getting someone to flip on somebody, isn't that kind of the key where the DA's office comes in, putting pressure on them on the charges to get them to flip on the guy above them? Why is he not here to?
Yeah. Well, I can't speak for the DA, so he's a independently elected district attorney. I do try to work with his office on these cases because we should all, of course, be working together. I can't force him to do something that I believe he should be doing, but we try our best to work together. I can tell you from my perspective, our police officers and our investigators, they are doing a really good job with these investigations and with these arrests. And we, of course, need a layer with our district attorney, the courts, and others, which we don't necessarily have complete control of. And this is not to make an excuse, but we need to be working together as one unit to address these problems and to hold people accountable. And accountability could be a number of forms. You know, it's not just about locking someone up and throwing away the key. It can involve a number of layers of things. So my hope is that we'll get to that point. I'm hopeful. Thank you. Well, again, San Francisco is a major city. Just like New York, just like other places, we're a major city. And unfortunately, crime does happen. And, you know, that's what we're experiencing. And sadly, many of the people who are being targeted are not just tourists. They are people who live in San Francisco. This is something that's been going on for a very long time. As you know, we've implemented various pieces of legislation to hold people accountable. We've worked with the rental car companies to do awareness campaigns to make sure people know that it's going on. We launched a Park Smart campaign, so we're doing what we can to address it. And I think that part of why we're being targeted is because San Francisco is a major city and a lot of people visit San Francisco, and we have a lot of folks who live here and a lot of people who park on the streets. So that's probably one of the reasons. And thank you all so much for joining us here today.